This show is brought to you by PivX, private instant verified transactions. With its groundbreaking zero coin staking and masternodes, PivX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex. And for more information, go to www.pivex.org. Hello again, welcome to ITK Crypto, part of Smart Reach. We've got a fantastic interview lined up today. We've been trying to get this one for a while. So it's Geoff from Chockablock.io. Welcome along, Geoff. Great to speak to you.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Great stuff. Well, you got me, Tom White, and we've got Cryptosi as well. You okay, Cryptosi?
Yeah, not too bad, Tommy. Nursing a bit of a cold, but delighted to have Geoff with us. Really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, well, Geoff, you might not know that it's been snowing badly over here in the UK, so it's no surprise that Cryptosi and I have been feeling the effects of that. But let's get straight into this then. And what we ask everyone, Geoff, to start with is just explain who you are and what your working background was before crypto.
Sure. I guess I'll start a little bit kind of like with my academic background. I studied a field called human factors and applied cognitive psychology, which I kind of chalk up to being a study that, or a field that focuses on how people think while they interact with technology, specifically their, processing capabilities or cognitive capacities, what kinds of information that they need in order to make various decisions as they're interacting with the technology that they're, using to complete a specific objective. This was a field that was pretty much born out of the aviation industry. So you can kind of think about pilots in a cockpit and how do you arrange dials and information and things like that in the best way to provide pilots with like the best form of information and the way of channeling it to them so they can make the best decisions that they need to make while they're, executing their duties. And so from there, once I got out into the business world, I worked in educational technology for about 8 years. And there I studied how teachers and students interacted with various forms of technology to either kind of facilitate or assess learning in some way. So I would go into classrooms and kind of use various observation devices to kind of watch how students were interacting with their laptops or their tablets or whatever device they might be using. You never really know with classrooms. And then I'd compile that information and analyze it, and then use that to make design recommendations on how to improve the software. And so in early 2017, I finally kind of got into crypto. And so I'm kind of a noob for, I guess, most of you who are listening. But the more that I got into it, the more I learned about what was going on, the more fascinated I got with it. And so I started Chockablock last year. And its main focus is to help those that are working with cryptocurrency or designing products or things like that around it to create things that are a little bit more user-friendly.
Yeah, okay. That sounds great. I suppose that takes us nicely into Chockablock.io. And I think what I've got to ask first of all, Geoff, is what is UX and how is it different to UI? And that means you're probably going to have to explain what UI is to some of the listeners as well.
Sure. So we'll start with UI. And UI really means it's the means by which like a user and a computer system interact. And in particular, the use of input devices and software. So you can kind of think about UI as something that has evolved over time as we've gotten better with computers. When my father first was working with computers back in the 70s, he was dealing with punch cards and physical knobs, that they would use to kind of program computers. Eventually, we start to get the graphical UI, the GUI, the graphical user interface, which allowed us to have point and click interfaces. From there, it evolved to having touchscreens in our mobile devices where we now have a lot of tapping, swiping, that kind of thing that we interact with by just kind of touching the interface. And sooner or later, that's probably going to evolve into other things where it could be just gestures, from like the Minority Report, if you've seen that movie, or maybe even the use of biometric things like EEG to help control an interface just by kind of thinking about what you want to happen. And so then that takes us into UX, where UX, a good summary of that is like the user experience encompasses all the aspects of an end user's interaction with, like, let's say a company and its services and its products, the overall experience of a person using a product such as a website or computer application, especially in terms of how easy or pleasing it is to use. Now, I personally have my own definition of user experience, or what a good user experience comes down to, and that is providing a path of least resistance between the end user and the objectives that they are trying to accomplish. And so this it turns UX into something that is made up of a lot of different variables, including like, what are those objectives that a user is trying to accomplish? A lot of times companies will develop products with a very specific thing in mind that they're trying to help users achieve. And that's great. That's what you're supposed to do. But you also need to make sure that you watch how users are interacting and using your product, because often they might be using it to achieve objectives you didn't anticipate. And so it's on you to kind of identify that and make sure that you adopt and evolve your user experience to help end users achieve those objectives more easily. Again, reducing or making the path of least resistance. And so some of the things you got to take into consideration are like, what are the end users' past experience with this technology or technology like it? What is their education level? What technology or types of devices are they using while they interact with your products? What is their cultural influences? Cultural influences can have a huge input or effect on, should I say, it can have a huge influence on how a person interacts with various technology. Westerners typically read from, left to right. Information is presented like that in a lot of interfaces that are presented to Westerners. But not all cultures read that way. Some read from top to bottom or right to left. And so they might have different ways in which they scan for information in a particular interface. So you have to take that into consideration when developing for, different cultures other than your own.
You explained that quite well, actually, especially, the kind of the difference in culture and the way you read and stuff. And I suppose that's something that you must think about quite a lot, at Chockablock.io.
Yeah, one of the coolest things, and what I think is actually one of the more beautiful things about what's going on with the crypto world, is you're dealing with products that are kind of like worldwide. They're being built by teams that are globally put together. And so instead of just thinking about a market that is like very specific and perhaps very close to your own demographic, you're developing and working with products that are aimed for people that aren't necessarily like you. And it makes you, you gotta kind of have love for that culture and understanding of that culture in order to help develop a product that is fitting for it. And so that's like one of the more beautiful things that I really like about working in this space is trying to think that way and working with people that are all over the globe.
And Cryptosi, what do you think about that when we talked about, UI and UX?
I think it's pivotal. I feel like often UX in particular is overlooked by a lot of projects to the extent that they feel that a developer can just do it. Like it's just something that you can just do. Oh, we kind of know how people use software, so we're just going to build it. What really gets me with the work that Geoff does is that he really gets into the way that people think when they're interacting with these softwares, especially people that haven't used crypto before. And I think it's priceless, really, for dev teams to have this type of insight when they're building things. It just leads to much, much, much better software.
Yeah, okay. And Geoff, I think what people, you've said that you're a fairly newbie as you described yourself there. And a lot of people who I speak to, and a lot of our listeners, they've kind of said that crypto has been extremely hard to use. Do you agree with this? Have you found that? And do you think UX plays a role in this?
That's a really good question. And I think that UX definitely plays a big part in it, but there's more to that story. For me, crypto at first wasn't, it was, I should say there's aspects of it that were hard to use. And I find things, with various wallets and things that I explore and investigate. But it was more so first understanding what was going on. Like, why is this different? What is different about it? Why is this, how is it all working? And so I think one of the bigger issues that faces the crypto community is that, and I'm going to take a step back here. I'm going to reference a book that Cryptosi and I have talked about before called Crossing the Chasm. It was written by an author. His name is Geoffrey Moore back in, I think, 1991. And he talks about, this gap that exists between what we'll call the early adopters and then the early majority of people. And with any kind of high-tech market, there's this gap that exists there. So you have the innovators who create something. You have the early adopters who are willing to deal with technical bugs and a little bit more pain points in order to kind of get what they're working with up and running because they're interested, right? But then there's this next step that you got to get to, which is like the early majority of people who aren't necessarily going to be willing to go through all of the hurdles in order to get the new tech up and running. So how do you reach them, right? And so I think that is where UX is really going to come into play. And also just general education and trying to get people to understand it and understand what's different about it. And so I think that a lot of the way that we present cryptocurrency and the new technology to that demographic, it has to come in with a lot of more explanation, explaining to them, why is this better? Why is this different? Why is this going to help your life?
Yeah, I agree with that. I couldn't really agree with that any more than what you've just said. So I think with all that in mind, what you've just said, is there any advice that you'd give a new person who's about to start using crypto?
So like a new person that's like interested in getting into the crypto field, and we're talking about someone who's not necessarily technically savvy, because that's another thing. Like if you're not so technically savvy, getting into it can be difficult, as it takes a lot of setup sometimes if you're dealing with like a wallet that you're downloading. But to answer your question, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent there. I would say, first of all, you need to educate yourself with like, why is this different? What's new about it? What are the mechanisms that are running cryptocurrency? Because that in itself, I find so very fascinating. And once you understand what's really kind of going on here, and that is the advent of what I'm referring to as like world computers. And I think that's kind of a term that's starting to be used a bit more now. World computers that allow anybody to interact with like what's being managed on that world computer. Right now, cryptocurrency is like one of those main things that are being managed on it. So educate yourself about that, understand what's going on with that, and also research the various cryptocurrency projects that you're looking into. Make sure that there are good teams that are behind it. And from a financial thing, and again, I'm not a financial person, so this is, take what I say with a grain of salt. Look at projects that provide you with some kind of reward, right? A lot of cryptocurrencies out there might be operating on a proof of stake consensus mechanism, which would allow you to kind of hold those that cryptocurrency in a wallet that would then generate a reward, or you can kind of think of that as interest or a dividend if it was a stock. And so make sure that you're getting something out of your investment as well.
Yeah, cryptos, is there anything you can add to that? I mean, that's sound advice. Is there anything else that you can add?
No, not really. Jeff is the expert on UX. He knows far more than me. But something that it just sprang to mind as Geoff was speaking then was thinking back to when the Windows first came out, because I remember using MS-DOS when I was much younger. I mean, it's something called command line. And I was just thinking to myself that what the main shift was that Microsoft started to explain the system to users in a way that was more familiar to what users were used to using in everyday life. So you had like files inside folders, and everybody can kind of understand that, like you open a folder and inside will be the files. And it just sprung to mind just now. I kind of feel like crypto isn't at that stage yet where we're explaining, or the user has to do things that are kind of natural to them from what they do in the outside world. I just wondered what Geoff's view was on that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And so I'm going to reference a few what we call design heuristics. And by the way, anybody who's listening to this and interested in learning more about user experience, the Nielsen Norman Group, nng.com, we're pioneers in this. And you can go to their website and learn a great deal about design paradigms and different things regarding user experience, including they have a set of 10 design heuristics, which are good to kind of reference as you're going about design. And one of them is something that I'm going to refer to as like the match between the system and the real world. And I think that's what you're getting at, Cryptosi, when you're talking about these folders. It's like people interact in a physical world. Our world is a physical world where you interact with physical objects. And so when you present information to people in a way that kind of matches that, it adheres to their existing mental model about how things work. Oh, a folder contains things. Inside the folder can be multiple folders, right? That's something that they can kind of comprehend. They already have the mental model there for them to understand that, and therefore can interact with it without, extensive explanation. And so I think that that's something that, again, cryptocurrency isn't quite there yet, because I haven't come across something that I find to be the best explanation of it in a way that people can tie it to something they already understand. And so that's kind of difficult, like there hasn't been that kind of presentation of it in a way that is something that they can kind of relate to. And so hopefully as we continue to, move forward and evolve, you'll start to see those things and people become a bit more familiar with it.
Yeah, I suppose, everything that we've been talking about there is I guess, improving people's user experience. I mean, are there any other things that you'd like to see crypto projects include to improve that.
This podcast has been brought to you by Rhubarb Media. Rhubarb Media are the branding specialists behind successful crypto projects such as PivX, Vendible, and Libertaria. The Rhubarb style is both loved and respected the world over. So if you want your project to appeal to techies and everyday users alike, give Rhubarb Media a try. You cannot possibly be disappointed. Link is in the description.
So I think one thing that crypto projects could do, and this is actually speaking from the perspective of the project, so it's not necessarily what the end user would see, but it ties into that. I would love for the various teams that are developing, crypto projects to do more user experience research, doing testing of their designs, getting it out there. There are methodologies that have been developed to help, teams test the things that they are building to see what the pain points are, like what's easy, what's not easy for people to do. And I can tell you from my own experience of almost 10 years, doing this kind of thing, that you will learn more in watching a user interacting with your product. You will learn more from that than what you could possibly come up together as a team as the pain points. Just watching somebody do something speaks volumes. I mean, the old term, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Imagine what like a video clip of watching a real end user or multiple end users actually interacting with your product would tell you. And so that's something, this is my shameless plug here, that I can help any team out with. It's like setting up these kinds of studies in order to have them really watch and observe end users interacting with their products and having the data collected from that presented to the team in a way that is comprehensible and consumable. And also, you can apply it to the design. So that's one thing that I really think that crypto projects should really be taking on, is more user experience research in order to improve the products.
Yeah, that brings on quite nicely to the next one, because, you're talking about kind of research and stuff from projects that you fully researched. Is there a project that you feel has, the best overall experience? And has anyone got to that stage where, it's 100%, like 10 out of 10?
It's a good question. So I'll start that with first saying kind of what I've been doing and what I've been trying to do. And this has been also a little bit of my business tactic, is I will take on a particular product. I will have not ever interacted with it before, but I will use the kind of documentation mechanisms, my methodologies that I established while working in educational technology, to observe my own self interacting with the product, like cameras recording a touchscreen as I'm interacting with it, cameras on like a computer if I have to use that as some sort of supplemental device to gather information while I'm, interacting with the product. And I will go through the product, setting it up from a very candid standpoint, as if I am a user, because I am a user, right? But I'm only one user, but I'm also someone who can kind of speak to the things that I'm seeing in a way that could be a bit more consumable by the development team. So what I'll do is I'll record myself doing that, and I'll send that video to the team, or I'll have Cryptosi post it or something like that, in the hopes that that team will see it, they'll learn from it, and perhaps say, hey, can you help us out with some more things? So in my time doing that, I've watched and looked at a lot of different products, and I can't say that there's one that's like, the best overall, but I can speak to some things that I really liked from various products that I've gone into. And I'll start off with Arc.io. This is one that actually Cryptosi had me look into. And Arc.io, I looked at their desktop wallet, and I found that they had come up with a really nice flow for getting users into the wallet, getting the wallet set up. I've noticed that a lot of projects or wallets have leveraged this it's like the exact same template. I'm assuming that it resides on GitHub someplace, and these teams just go and pick up this base kind of code, and then they repurpose it for their wallets. But they all kind of follow the same structure and layout and the way that things are presented to users. But Arc.io had come up with a brand new way of doing this that I really liked. And my advice to them would be to use that same flow of getting people through the setup of things, and use that for the selection of delegates, because it's a delegated proof of stake consensus mechanism for how their cryptocurrency works. And if you want to be able to stake your cryptocurrency, you have to set up a delegate, and that is not very well explained in the process. And so if they could leverage this amazing flow that they have for the initial setup of the wallet for that, I think that would really behoove them. Some other things that I've really liked, the PivX wallets, they leverage the status icons that sit in the bottom right-hand corner of the wallet. Now, going back to those heuristics I was talking about earlier, one of them is visibility into system status. You want to always present the user with information about what the system is doing at any given point in time so that they, feel like they understand, they're on top of it, and don't accidentally do something that could cause a problem with something that might be running because they're like, I don't know what's going on. Let me exit out of this or do something stupid. So you always want to make them feel comfortable with what's going on. And so PIVX has done a great job with these status icons that sit down the bottom right-hand corner of the wallet, but they've also taken the next step and allowed them to be a bit interactive, where you can click on them and it will act as a shortcut to a specific thing within the wallet settings. And that could include just, locking and unlocking the wallet. You could click on this little icon that indicates whether the wallet's locked or not, and it would allow you to either lock it or unlock it straight from there. So that was something really nice that I liked. I can keep going if you have time.
We've definitely got time. This is a great insight.
Sure. So I'll talk about another project that actually Cryptosi had me working on, and that was the Delta Portfolio Tracker. I worked with their mobile application to kind of set it up and get it up and running. Now, the videos for all of this are on my website, and I'm sure Cryptosi is also posting them someplace else. So, if you want to check them out, you can go to my website, which is chockablock.io, and you can see what I'm talking about with some of this. But for the Delta one, I had a great deal of trouble getting it set up. However, I really liked the mechanisms that they were using to try to get it set up. And that included let me give you some background on the portfolio tracker. Essentially, you can connect to your existing exchange accounts as well as your wallets so that the crypto tracker can pull in all that information and give you a summary about what's going on with like your portfolio. I had never come across this wallet connection piece before, and the way that they had it set up was you could scan the QR code of your wallet, and that would import the information. It was very quick, very seamless. It didn't work. There might have been a bug that was going on. I can't quite figure out why it wasn't working for me that day, but I really liked that mechanism that they were trying to, use to make it quick and seamless. Again, for me, user experience is about providing the end user with a path of least resistance between themselves and the objective that they're trying to accomplish. If that objective is getting all of your information, into one spot, and you can provide them with a mechanism where all they got to do is scan that QR code and boop, it's all imported. That's pretty seamless, right? That's a lot better than trying to go and find, your API keys and secrets from an exchange and manually typing that stuff in. So I thought that was a really cool leverage of, some kind of technology to improve the, that flow that the user has to go through in order to gain that information.
Yeah, it's great listening to all of that. I mean, I think if you've got another one to talk about there, please do.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about one issue that I've come across, and this goes back to how I was talking about a lot of these wallets that I've come across leverage the same structure, though they do make their own changes to it, right? And I've seen this in quite a few wallets, including Neblio, PIVX, Redcoin, a bunch of other ones. And I don't understand why they've done this, but maybe there's a reason. But the wallet addresses are kind of hidden in the navigation. So you'll have the wallet, you'll have these tabs, and these are all desktop wallets, by the way. These tabs that you can click on to go send, and then they have something that's labeled receive, but really what that tab is doing is allowing you to request, and that's a very different mechanism than to actually receive. Your real receiving addresses are someplace else. It's not even in the main tab navigation. You have to go up to your file settings and find it from there. And so I don't really know why they've hidden that like that, but I feel like that's something that needs to be brought up to the forefront because you're dealing with the positioning of what I will refer to as like information. When a user comes to this wallet, they're going to think about, some of the main things I need to be able to do is send money out and receive money in. And so information that surrounds those basic actions should be placed close to one another, right? In good proximity to one another because they are similar in terms of like what they're doing. And so I feel like in these wallets, those things should also be brought to the forefront, the receiving addresses. In the Neblio wallet, as well as the Qtum wallet, I think that there's this bug that I keep seeing, and that is when you get to the receiving addresses, by default, they are truncated. They're not showing the full address. And there is this assumed way that you could somehow grab onto the table. You know how like in tables you can move column widths over the border, the divider, I should say. You can move them to expand the column. However, it doesn't work very well within these wallets. There's like this weird trick that you have to do in order to find it. And I found it by accident in the Neblio wallet and within the Qtum wallet as a means to expand the column width. It's not very clearly expressed to the user. How do you view the full wallet address? Now, these wallets have the ability to copy that address, which is great because you reduce the chance of user error if you allow them to copy the address to a clipboard, assuming that they're going to take that address and put it someplace else so that they can either have someone send them funds or they can send funds themselves. However, in the case of Neblio, I was looking at this on one of their stake boxes, so a Raspberry Pi that had this installed. I needed to get that address off the Raspberry Pi and to my laptop so I could send funds to it from the exchange I was using. However, I couldn't see the full address, right? That copy and paste feature would be great if I was doing it all on the same machine. But what happens if I want to, manually type in that wallet address into something because I can't use the copy and paste functionality? Having that truncated increased the chances of me thinking that was the full address and therefore accidentally sending funds to a wallet address that wouldn't receive it. And I would lose those funds permanently. So that's an example of some issues that I've seen within these wallets.
Yeah, and I guess, when you see those issues, once those issues are seen, it's easier to sort out, I suppose. The next question, Geoff, is one that we ask everyone, but you've talked about so many different projects there. We want to know that if you were to go all in on a project that's already out there, which would it be?
So again, I guess this comes down to kind of an investment advice, which I'm not an investor, you know what I mean? Like, don't take what I say with a grain of salt. But looking at what's been going on, looking at kind of how things are evolving, I would say that you would need to look at, I'm going to give you a name. I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to build up to it, I promise. You need to look at a couple factors like, what is the project doing? Is it solving, some sort of real world problem, or is it providing a service that can be used for a multitude of different purposes? So a lot of these cryptocurrencies out there, these platforms, are building platforms that allow other people to build things on top of them. And I see that as a tremendous example of something that provides a multiple purposes. It can be used for a lot of different things and therefore is useful in the real world. People can come to them and build their own dApps on top of them, whatever those dApps may be, and they are run by the underlying blockchain, or what I should say is like the underlying world computer that cryptocurrency exists within. So having that said, you would also want to look at teams that have a strong development roadmap, seeing that they've got their stuff together, that they got a good plan going forward. And also that by investing in it, that you're getting more out of it than just the hope that the price will go up. So this goes back to that proof of stake consensus mechanism where cryptocurrencies can actually, by holding them in a wallet, you can earn some kind of interest. So looking at those kind of parameters, I would say that one of my favorite projects, though they're not quite there yet, is Ethereum. I know that they're working towards a proof of stake mechanism where you could, put your coins up and receive a reward for having them. Their platform allows people to go there and build things on top of it. And it looks like they've got some of the best developers out there and a pretty decent roadmap. So to me, that seems like a project that satisfies the criteria for a good investment.
What do you think of that, Cryptosi?
Yeah, I think Ethereum's one of my favorites as well. It's a great project, and one thing they're not lacking is developer power. So yeah, I would say it's definitely a safe bet. Definitely a safe bet.
Okay, then, Geoff, it's been a pleasure to have you on. I think just let the listeners know where they can find out a little bit more about you and Chockablock.
Absolutely, and thanks again for having me. I really do appreciate it. People, if they want to learn more about like what I do and kind of see some of these exploration videos that I referenced, you can go to my website, chockablock.io. It's nothing great to look at quite yet, but it's getting there. And I should have more blog posts there soon that include not just these exploration, but also suggestions about various ways that we could design the interfaces of wallets to be a bit more user-friendly.
Geoff, absolutely great to have you on. Hopefully we'll get you on again in the future, a little bit of an update and such like, if that would be all right with you.
That'd be great. Absolutely.
Great stuff. And Cryptosi, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tommy. And just to add that a lot of Geoff's videos are actually available on SmartReach on our YouTube channel. So if you go over to our YouTube channel, you should find quite a few of Geoff's UX reviews. And yeah, they are absolutely riveting, especially if you're planning on putting together a project of your own or you're a developer of any kind. It really, I've learned loads from these videos, and I really think I can't speak highly enough of them.
Fantastic, right? Great way to end it there. Geoff, thank you again.
Of course. Take care, gentlemen.
This podcast was brought to you by Meros Cryptocurrency. Meros is a cryptocurrency payment system that does what cryptocurrency originally intended to do. Via a practical and secure form of direct payment, Meros utilises the best of current technology in a powerful new way. It introduces a groundbreaking consensus mechanism called merit caching. This enables Meros to be both feeless and instant while maintaining the same level of integrity of traditional networks like Bitcoin. To find out how you can participate in the future of crypto payments, go to meroscrypto.io now.